Okay. I'm, I was stuck in the annotation, having fun with that. Okay, so welcome to our second webinar, and thank you, Adria and Maria, for kicking us off with a little bit of tech information. We will be asking you to annotate based on your results of your self-assessment on the competencies. So here we are, webinar 2. So glad to see that many of you could make it. This is our agenda. We're going to talk about the objectives of our session, go over some materials that will be coming up. We are going to reflect on week 2. Thank you. I see, gosh, today I opened up Moodle and so many have jumped in with so much that we're already well into week 3. Even though we are going to be going over some of the things you've already discussed, domain 1 and 3. So thank you for being so enthusiastic. Maybe it was the holiday, I don't know, maybe you had more time, but thank you for getting the week off to a really good start. So we're going to be talking about those 2 domains, using data and effective communication. And there is as I said, there are a couple of assignments, and I see just so many of you have already done those, but observing domains 1 and 3 performance indicators. Today, we'll also talk about what's coming up as you finish up this 4-week course, making a SMART goal for yourself and planning your own professional development as you go into the spring, maybe, or maybe something you do next week. And then we'll reflect and talk a little bit about our next steps and wrap up today's session. So with that, these are the objectives. By the time of our short time together today, you'll be able to identify the competencies in domains 1 and 3, relate them to your classroom practice, and if maybe not create, at least create in your mind an initial professional development goal for yourself. So this is where we'd like you to do some of that annotation. So what, as Maria explained, you're looking, I see it on the left side of my screen, a little green pencil, or you may have to go to the Zoom toolbar to look for a pencil that says annotate. And you can select anything, but it's probably easiest to stamp. So hopefully, everyone has done the assessment of your own competencies. So thinking about your top 3 or so, could you go ahead and identify your top 3 results of what you see as potential areas of growth for yourself? So annotate on the screen right now your top 3. If you do have any challenges with that, go ahead and type it in the chat. We can annotate for you. We kind of want to see what are some commonalities. So thank you, Danielle is annotating away. Thank you, Chaya. Jose, excellent. Okay, give you just another minute. Interestingly, domains 1 and 2 mostly, right? A little bit with 4. And I think that was you, Chaya. I saw a question about, it's such a beautiful question, like how can part-time teachers and those who are maybe already retired and coming back to keep themselves busy, how can we all impart these important competencies, information to them? And so I answered that, but I think you're all here partly because you want to do well for your students, but some of you I know are here because, hey, your school gives you a little extra pay. And so at the end of today, we'll be talking about how you can get those continuing education units. But yeah, it's a tough one, right? Getting teachers that to participate in professional development. If there are not funds, it is hard because some of us have to work 2, 3 schools in California to make one income. So that's a tough one. But thank you for being here, everybody. I see that just a few of you really mentioned that the fourth domain about continually building your knowledge and teaching skills it's a priority, but maybe not your top, right? It looks like everybody, this is interesting. I think the reason why a lot of people go into education is because we feel that we do communicate very clearly, right? So that's something we do daily in our jobs. So it maybe doesn't feel like something that you necessarily need to improve on. So I see a lot of domain 1 and 2. So thank you everybody for participating in that. We'll go ahead and clear those off and we'll continue on. So far in our first webinar, we focused on domain 2. And as I said, today we'll be on domain 1 and 3, and domain 4 is mostly covered in Moodle in the final week. A little bit this week, if I recall correctly. So today is starting off with domain 1, which is about monitoring and managing student learning and performance through data. So we're going to dig into that first of all. And so data can mean many different things to different people. So what we're going to be looking at are the 4 competencies within this first domain. So what we have first is competency 1, assesses learners' prior knowledge, learning needs, and college and career readiness goals. And I think it was Jose that posted, if I recall, if it was you, Jose, I just read that you posted something about you do a survey of your students to find out who they are. And that's so beautiful. And you probably saw many people congratulating you and wanting to take that idea. So finding out who your students are, diagnosing their needs, finding out their goals, very important. 1.2 is set learning goals and a course of study. Okay, so this is my weekend work usually, right? Planning my lessons based on what I found out students were able to perform this week. 1.3 monitors learning through summative and formative assessment data. And the last one is adapts instruction based on formative and summative assessment data. So monitoring, seeing what's working, what's not, and then adapting instruction. So we are going to do a couple of breakout sessions today in rooms for you to discuss with your colleagues in this course. First, starting with this first competency of domain 1, which is assesses learners' prior knowledge, learning needs, and college and career readiness goals. So we want to have some cross learning, peer teaching, sharing of ideas. So we'd like you in a moment to join your breakout room and discuss, how do you do this? How do you assess prior knowledge? How do you find out what the learning needs are of your students? And how do you find out about their goals? And why this is important and how it affects instruction. So how do you do it? How it affects instruction and why is it important? So Maria has put those 3 questions into the chat. She's going to open up the breakout rooms. We're going to take anywhere up to probably 5 or so minutes for you to discuss. So if you want to take a quick moment to introduce yourself and then dive into answering these questions. So here we go. Any questions before we send you off? All right, pretty clear-cut tasks. So here we go. Have some good conversation. So I believe that if you didn't get a chance to share fully, there is a forum, there is an activity in Moodle. So I know some people were unable to attend today, and we can see much fuller what other participants do as well. So thank you for that. And so we're going to move on to the second competency of domain 1. And as you can see, that is sets learning goals and a course of study. In order for us as adult educators to be effective, it helps if we set learning goals and a course of study that address learners' needs and interests. So this competency refocuses on collecting and reviewing this information from the first day throughout the course, even at the end. And then taking this information about our students and thoughtfully applying it to our course goals and objectives. When we set goals together with our students for the course that builds on their skills and knowledge, then our students are better to link the content that they're gaining through taking our courses to their personal and professional goals and interests. We need to be really explicit about it too, but it's all about relevancy. And when we can help students connect what they're learning in the classroom to their broader and career goals, whether that's further education or just doing better in their job that they have now, or community integration, or whatever it is, the research shows that there's greater persistence. I want to ask you if you want to just type in the chat, yes or no. Personal goals. Do you set personal goals for yourself? If you would like to share yes or no in the chat really quickly. Okay, great. So I do goal setting together with my class, and CalPro has a wonderful offering that is both an online course and that can come to your school as a community practice called Motivation and Persistence for Adult Learners. And I've gained so much from that course, including reinforcing for me that I need to help students set their goals. Many of my students, when I ask them what is your goal, they cannot articulate what their goal is. They say improve English, but they don't see further down the line until I question them a lot. But there is research that shows that people who use goal setting effectively, and that's the key, so that's why we're having you create a SMART goal as part of this course, they suffer less from stress and anxiety, they are able to concentrate better, they display more self-confidence, perform better, and are happier. So all of you said, whether intentionally or not, that you do set goals for yourself. Would you kind of agree with this? When you set a goal for yourself and you accomplish that goal, that you have some of these, positive impacts? So that's something we should do with our students, and we can create whole class goals, but definitely our students are diverse. So getting to know them and helping them set goals and then relate the course content to those goals in a very explicit way by telling what our objectives are and, letting them know straight, very forward how everything that we're teaching relates to their needs and goals can really help. So we're going to talk just a little bit about the next competency in this domain one, which is using summative and formative assessment data. So I'll pause for a moment. Please feel free to share in the chat, or if you would like to come off of mute and share your ideas or what you do as far as formative and summative assessment data. How are they different? Maybe if you can share an example. Great, Rebecca. Yes. CASAS, it tends to be summative. If you talk to people from CASAS, they say, oh no, this is formative. But I guess, like the pre-test, definitely, if you can get the results of the pre-test, then we can use that data to plan some instruction, right? And then I think, honestly, you probably use it like in my program at my school. We use that to determine if students have the skills, whether that's reading or if you do the listening test or whatever happens to be, to advance to the next level of instruction or the next course. Exactly. So some CASAs can be definitely used for both, actually, right? But oftentimes used as summative assessment. How about formative? Any ideas about what that means or what that looks like, for example, of something you do in your classroom? Yeah, exactly. Could be something as simple as an exit ticket. So you pose a question and students write the answer and you gather that. It could be a quiz. It could be asking students simply to tell you there's the famous one, the muddiest point. What was one thing you didn't understand today? Vocabulary, gamification. When you see that, you have a few teams and some students are leading in every team, those students are doing well, and what can you do to bring the other students up to par? You're right, Chaya. Formative is ongoing, and Karen, summative is at the end. Formative can be beginning, during, every day, a little bit here, there, right? And you're right that summative is maybe a little bit more for the student to get a message about whether they are ready, and formative is more to inform the instructor about whether their teaching was successful and whether the class is ready to go forward with the next lesson or unit of instruction, or whether there needs to be more teaching, reviewing. Maybe we need to do some differentiation for students who are just not getting it, extra support and things like that. Exactly. And yeah, right, Karen. So sometimes we can just observe formatively to see if students are grasping. We can walk around the classroom. If you're teaching on Zoom or online, you can observe students' posts and discussions. So many different forms, but yes, you got it. Summative is evaluation. It is evaluating student learning, measuring their progress. So CASAs, final exam, final project, determining next level. And formative is monitoring of student learning. That can help us decide what's next. What do we do tomorrow? So like you said, observations, closure discussions of a lesson, even portfolios, student error logs or other things. So summative is deciding, and formative is deciding how we can adapt and teach better. So thank you. So both can be more or less ongoing, but definitely formative is something we probably do, whether we really think about it or not. We do it maybe even unconsciously all the time in our teaching. Okay, so we use that data to inform our instruction, whether that's at the end, summative about how we're going to teach next term, or ongoing, how we're going to teach tomorrow. So that's how we can use the data. And that leads us to the third competency, is monitoring learning through summative and adapting instruction through formative and summative assessment data. So think about, I saw some of you put in the chat, adapting, doing it different. So what are some ways that you would adapt instruction? Let's say you did some sort of formative assessment today in class, and you realize, some students did not grasp what concept we covered today. What could you do using that data, whether it's a short quiz, an exit ticket, whatever? What could you do to adapt instruction either there on the spot or tomorrow in class? Danielle says peer teaching. Great. Reteach, try a different strategy. Assess if you need to review foundational skills. Great, Karen. Reteach to a small group. Review errors, Rebecca. Exactly. Okay, so yeah, we could reteach entirely. If I realize, oh my gosh, no one got it, I had an off day. I blame myself. I think good teachers, we should blame ourselves, not like, oh, look at the students, they didn't get it, right? So we could reteach it. We could present in a different way, as some of you are saying there, right? So learning styles have somewhat been debunked a little bit in the research, but there are definitely learning preferences for different students. So maybe we were just lecturing, and so maybe we need to mix it up with some of that peer teaching, jigsaw reading, something like that. So presenting it in a different way, providing additional practice for some students who maybe it's not the whole class, maybe it's just some. Or just different supplemental activities that we could even maybe assign for homework, or pulling some groups aside, as you said. So great. I think I'm preaching to the choir here. I think all of you do these things. So I'm sure we've all had this at some point, that we've been teaching something and
We think that our students are at level and ready, and we realize right there in the moment that maybe there is an unanticipated learning need. And so there are many things that we can do to take advantage of that teachable moment. And I think one thing we were talking about last webinar is maybe some students really do get it, and maybe they are at level or above level, and we can bring them in. And if you've ever had some students sort of lead a group discussion or lead some other students, the pride and confidence they get from that is wonderful. And I like this. Sometimes the spaghetti just doesn't want to stick to the wall. We have to try another type of pasta. Yeah, I love that. Teaching is planning, assessing, teaching, reflecting. It's continuous. It really is. It's never ending. It's a never ending cycle. Exactly. So thank you. So that is pretty much domain one in a nutshell, right? So there's that we could go much deeper, and you see in Moodle that each one of these is touched on a bit more. So when you get into Moodle, and again, I see that many of you have, there's a chance to go a little bit deeper in sharing what you do as well. So with that, you just stole my thunder. It is a continuous cycle. It really is. These 4 competencies, because the competencies tell us that effective instruction requires us to collect data ongoing about students' knowledge, interests, and goals, and then we use that data to set the course goals and make content relevant. And then we have to continually be collecting that data. So we use that to help us know what and how to teach. And we use this to give feedback to students too about their own progress and plan and deliver future instruction. So we are always at some point on this continuum of looking at data, planning instruction, revising instruction, and so on. It really is a continuous loop. Okay, so now we're going to transition into domain 3. And not many of you here, at least in this webinar, identified it as a need. And I think that's because we teachers love to explain things, don't we? We communicate very well already, at least we believe we do. So this domain is also has this added part about motivating, engaging. It's not just communicating at, but motivating and engaging in, our learners. So within this domain, we only really have 3 competencies. 3.1 communicates high expectations of learners and motivates them to persist to meet their goals. And then competency 2 communicates in a clear and understandable way. And then we have the third, engages in active listening, dialogue, and questioning to facilitate and support learning.
So we're going to have you discuss one more time in a brief breakout discussion about a time when someone communicated high expectations to you as it relates to this first competency. And then explain that, and then explain how you communicate high expectations to your learners. So we're going to
send you back to the same breakout rooms for just a couple more minutes. Please make sure that you participate, make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak, and then we'll come back and be talking about the next competencies of this domain. So here we go. Thank you, Maria.
Right, and everyone is back. Thank you for sharing your ideas. I think this is a really important one. Our learners are very diverse, as I said, and when we hold them to high standards and high expectations, first of all, we're giving them workplace skills, right? But I think they really appreciate that and take our classes more seriously. So thank you. So couple more competencies within this domain. 3.2 is communicates in a clear and understandable way. Now, I'm sure if I asked any of you if this is a quality that you have, you would say yes. That's why we are in the right profession. We communicate clearly and we explain things well. But sometimes, even if we have really planned out a lesson very well, this happens to all of us. We are explaining something with some direct instruction and students just don't get it. Can you please share in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself? What are some things that give us a clue as we are teaching that students signal to us that they have not understood the content or instructions? So anything that you see that like, oops, body language. Yeah, Danielle, if you can be even let us know a little, the confused face.
Yeah.
I love this one, Chaya. No eye contact, just looking down at the book. The book is suddenly, or the table is suddenly so fascinating, right? Their facial expressions. And then some students, they just, it's kind of like an issue of pride that they don't feel comfortable showing in front of everybody or to the instructor that they didn't understand. So sometimes they'll just have a blank face, right? Right, Karen, sometimes just doing the assignment wrong, turning immediately to, ask for clarification, sitting and doing nothing. Yeah, great. So I guess we are pretty well versed in these different signals that students can give to us. So yeah, taking forever just to get started. And what I've noticed for myself, Jose, is that sometimes I just rattle off. And I observed a really great teacher, excellent teacher in Zoom during COVID. And she did this. She said the nice and clearly 3-4 times the instructions for a multi-step assignment or a task. And she repeated 3-4 times, and it was pretty clear. But one thing is that it was in Zoom, and so seeing the words would have helped, right? So having the text support. But very interestingly, a student said, teacher, let me check and see that I got it right. First, you want us to do this, then you want us to do that. So for instructions, that is a good technique, is turning it back to the students. So if we've given even text support and visual and oral, we've given all the instructions, is just turning it back to the students. Like, what are you going to do first? Then what are you going to do next? If they can say it, then you know that they've understood, right? So yeah, thank you for that. So we may need to slow down. Sometimes we need to repeat, rephrase, go deeper, or use questioning strategies back to the students. So that's part of 3.3. The third competency in this domain 3 is engaging in active listening, dialogue, and questioning to facilitate and support learning. So I have this wonderful opportunity to observe a lot of teachers. And just last week, I observed an amazing teacher. But she didn't often ask questions. She was mostly giving the input and mostly doing the talking, where she could have done a lot more questioning. So I think that if this is something that is kind of resonates with you, this 3.3, I know a lot of you didn't indicate this, CalPro has a really wonderful training that's coming up in the spring, I believe, on effective questioning strategies, going beyond just, what's the answer to number 1A, but having students critically and creatively engage through questioning strategies that you use. Karen, thank you. You teach ABA, low literacy, okay, ESL. So you have to model, exactly modeling, doing that. We do gradual release of control. Now you do, and with ESL especially, having the sort of structure, which could be, frames, and giving students the
sentence starters to get started, right? Yeah, I love that. Thank you. So modeling your thinking is another thing, metacognition. So CalPro has another offering called Teaching Adults to Read, and that will be coming up this spring. And it really, especially with the teaching of reading, breaking down a text and doing the think aloud. So really modeling how you, as a skilled reader, process by saying what is in your mind, right? Karen says low literacy and language barriers can get in the way of effective communication and reading directions in English. Absolutely. And so I think one thing we can really do too is have students pause if they're, we do our standardized testing, CASAS tests, and have them, do practice quizzes like that where they slow down and they actually read the instructions. Right? So just a little more to say about this, about active listening, dialogue, and questioning. So what are some signs of active listening that as you are listening to your learners or your learners as they're listening to you, how do we show that we're actually learning or listening? I'm sorry. How do we show that we're listening? Eye contact, nodding, right? I mean, when you see that student who's doing this and making the eye contact and nodding, you know that they're not disengaged. When they're looking at their phone, there's something is really pulling them away, right? So, yes, we can do things like smiling, frowning, saying aha. So for our English language learners, teaching them the paralanguage, aha, right? It doesn't always cross cultural boundaries of how to listen actively. Rephrasing is a really important thing to teach our students. I think that's actually a workplace skill to have students say again what you told them in their own words, and reflecting on what a person has said. So I want to ask also this. Questioning strategies. When that comes to mind, what are some questioning strategies that you use to gauge understanding, comprehension, and facilitate learning? Any particular questioning strategies that come to your mind?
Think, pair, share. Isn't it nice to give students a chance to think on their own, rehearse with a partner before putting their hand up and telling the whole class? That little rehearsal time can, and also confirming their understanding with a peer is very useful. And asking open-ended questions. Exactly, Jose. Karen, in math, share their thinking, that think aloud. So as they, someone volunteers to come and solve a problem on the board, have them speak aloud their steps as they're going through, just as you do when you're teaching math. That's wonderful. Excellent. So thank you for that. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. For ESL, there is a questioning response if you're teaching very low level literacy students, called the early production approach. So not forcing them to speak, but having them listen and give yes, no answer. But then we all need to work up to questions that require extended thinking and longer responses that require, especially when reading, going back to the text and quoting from the text, or questions that even require integrating multiple sources, right? So getting to that open-ended is more, instead of convergent thinking, divergent thinking, and using higher order cognitive skills, definitely. So thank you, everyone. All right, so to summarize, that last competency emphasizes the importance of using effective and appropriate questioning strategies in the classroom, and the importance of including opportunities for students to clarify, confirm, or deepen their understanding of a task or an entire lesson. So we are coming to the end. Just to see the 3 competencies of domain 3, as you've seen, in each domain, the competencies really build on each other and complement each other, work together.
In this case, for domain 3 to be effective, teachers need to demonstrate strong communication skills and respect for our adult learners and all that they bring to the table. We know the importance of setting high expectations. You communicated about that in the breakout room. But if we cannot communicate effectively, then whatever we expect and communicate those high expectations to our learners, they will not have effect if we cannot communicate that. So that includes active listening, dialogue, effective questioning strategies. Those are all part of effective communication and vital to the learning process. And we're also modeling behaviors that we want our students to possess and use in the classroom and beyond. So we've pretty much gone over 3 of the 4 domains. As I said, domain 4 is covered more in Moodle because that's about you. That's about your own professional development. So speaking of professional development, we're going to talk about the final capstone assignment that's coming up week 4. Next week, you'll be submitting this. So we've looked at, through our webinars, domains 1, 2, and 3, as well as in Moodle, and you've taken that adult education teacher competency self-assessment, and you checked today by annotating which rose up as maybe areas that you could focus on for your own professional growth. So now we'd like you to kind of narrow your focus and see maybe if there's one particular competency that you could really be working on. In a way that's not overwhelming. This is not like, this is not considered graduate level work, okay? Just choosing something simple that you could start to work on as far as your own improvement. So this is where SMART goals come in. So SMART goals, I actually use SMART goals with my students when I have them set goals, because SMART goals are this acronym. Each letter represents an effective way of setting goals. So the S, is anybody familiar with SMART goals? Anybody know what the S stands for?
Is it
So I didn't
strategic
say, yeah, specific.
or
I didn't say
specific? There we go.
choose a domain, right? That's really large, a domain, but one competency is more specific. So specific, M,
Measurable.
measurable, A,
Attainable,
attainable or achievable, R,
realistic,
realistic or relevant,
Relevant.
exactly, and T,
time bound.
time bound, having a time frame, exactly. So we could finish this course up and just say, okay, go off it, go back to your classrooms, have fun. No, we want you to actually be able to take this information and apply it to your instruction. Some of you have been teaching a long time. There are always areas of improvement. I know that every day I reflect on my teaching and how I can do better. And so we want you to walk away with one particular thing to really focus on. Okay. So again, these are the 4 domains, and within each of those, there are particular competencies. So we're asking you to choose a competency. Okay. So you have the competency list and you can go back through that. But again, probably something came to the forefront as you self-assessed with the adult education teacher competencies self-assessment. That's a long one. So looking at the 4 domains, what you will do within those is choose a particular competency and fill out a form that is located in Moodle to make a plan for yourself. We know that goal setting is so important for our learners, but it's also important for us. So for example, you'll choose a domain and you'll write in domain 1, domain 3, whatever it happens to be, and the specific competency. Then what is the performance indicator within that? Okay. Then that's not the last step. We need to put actionable steps. So I don't know if anybody here, if you are responsible for contributing to your agency's continuous improvement plan. If so, you are probably really familiar with this. But what are you going to do? What's your first step? So maybe the first thing I'm
going to do is I'm going to try exit tickets next week to start to gather formative assessment data. Okay, so that could be within, I think that's domain 3, right? So time frames. Okay, so you will see this and fill it out, and then that's not the end though, because just goal setting is effective when you write things down. We know that. But there is another step that we would like you to do, and that is, you will see that in Moodle. It will be to create an accountability strategy. So all of this is in Moodle. Before we wrap up and tell about the next steps, are there any questions about anything we've covered today, domains 1 or 3, or this final capstone, or the adult education teacher competency, self-assessment, or anything at all?
All right. So what's coming up? Wow, you've made it this far. The finish line is just steps away, everybody. So coming up in week 4, due on November 19th, there is
a video about domain 4, about continually gaining more knowledge, refining your skills, and so on, and a discussion with that. Due on November 21st is this individual action plan with a SMART goal. So that form that I just showed you a moment ago, identifying a competency, breaking it down to actionable steps. And I know this is not at all about technology today, but we did see technology discussed quite a lot in Moodle. And I feel like if I cannot come up with some good steps, maybe I would even ask ChatGPT for the steps of this SMART goal. But I know what I want to work on, right? So coming up with a goal for yourself. And maybe it's something that can be completed within a couple of weeks, or maybe it's more long-term going into the spring. That's fine. But we also want you to submit by November 23rd. So let's try to wrap up everything before Turkey Day. An accountability strategy. So we know that with our learners, we can be their coaches. If we help them set a goal for our courses, we can be their coaches and revisiting those goals. But who are you going to have be your coach, right? So maybe you have a colleague, maybe it's, someone that you can talk to about how your goal is going. And sometimes good goals do require even revisions. So that will be the final thing, along with the course evaluation, to complete in Moodle. So those are the final activities. So as we wrap up, I don't know if anyone wants to share in the chat, or if you would like to come off of mute and share, what do you think will be the greatest change to your classroom instruction as a result of your getting to know, becoming more familiar with the competencies? If anybody would like to share that.
Thank you, Danielle. Yeah, I think it's really important. I mean, I don't know about you all. For me, in my job, I am evaluated by students and by my peers every 3 years. A lot can go downhill in 3 years. So it's good to think about how you can self-evaluate. So that is, ongoing self-evaluation. I know sometimes we're very busy people, but reflecting on your
teaching and knowing some specific things that you can work on before your next formal evaluation of your administrator. That's a great thing. And that could be even, go into, if you have any pre-meeting with when you have an evaluation, you could even mention things you've been working on. So that's wonderful. Anybody else?
For me, I'm doing 3.3, the effective communication. What is it? I wrote it down. Engages in active listening dialogue. Our school actually has a big focus right now on the teachers speaking less and the students increased engagement through the students. So that's a school focus, and it's also, they always say, think back over the last week, what percentage of time were you speaking versus
Oh
the
my
percentage of time the students were speaking.
I
And that
love
needs
that.
to, if it's like 80%,
Yeah.
20%, that needs to change.
Yeah, I
So
love that.
for me, that's already a focus that we've just started addressing to increase our student engagement.
I love that. I mean, you know, it's painful. I haven't done this, but they say a really good practice is to set up a video camera of yourself teaching. That's to really see how you're addressing all students in the class and how much you are actually talking instead of using questioning strategies and drawing out quiet students. That's wonderful. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing
When
that,
I
Karen.
am exhausted and dehydrated at the end of the day, I know I have spoken way too much.
Yeah. That's true, right? I love it. Yeah, I mean, sometimes students come in really tired, and it's just how can we make, first of all, the content exciting for them? And we think like maybe that's me. Maybe I need to do more, but maybe we need to turn it more over to them to give them opportunities to speak more. I love that. All right. Well, thank you for sharing, everybody. So I'm going to turn it over to Maria or Adria, one of you two, to finish up. If you want more moolah, if you're here to get more money, who doesn't love more money? They're going to talk a little bit about these continuing education units. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Kristi. Thank you very, very much. So yes, I'm going to jump in and just speak about the opportunity to apply for continuing education units or CEUs. This is offered through CSU Sacramento Campus College of Continuing Education. And I know that some of you will have questions about what additional steps do I need to do to secure those. Fortunately for you, I mean, I think you'll be happy with this answer. There's not much else that you need to do. It's by completing all of the pieces of the course. Yes, it is so easy, isn't it, Danielle? Just by completing the course, once you get to the end piece of the course and you'll get your completion certificate, and then there will be a little message there in your Moodle course that you'll be receiving an email from me. What I will do is be able to provide you with a registration form that you just complete the registration form and return that to CSU Sacramento. And you return the form with the fee for the credits. Um, and that's it. There's no additional assignments that you need to complete. Your coursework is all within the course. So, yeah, I hope that gives you just the general information that you need. And again, there's nothing that you need to do today, but after we get to the end date of the course, we would, send out the information about that to all participants who complete, and then you can take it from there. So feel free to email me if you have additional questions about that, and we'll be in touch about it, about the details. And I realize I'm just talking and talking, and it's time for us to let you go. So I'm going to say again, we're not at the last day of the course, but this is the last time that we'll see your faces and hear each other's voices. So while I have you and while we have Kristi here, I do want to say again, thank you so much. As we continue to go, Kristi, for your facilitation and leadership in the course and for just engaging. And participants, thank you so much for taking time, especially at the end of a day like this, to be with us in person. It is wonderful to be able to engage with you in this way. And we look forward to seeing you some more in Moodle over these next, what do we have? Probably 10 days or so. 23rd is the end, and today's the 13th. So go forth and have a wonderful rest of your day. Take good care, everyone. Bye-bye.